Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the We're So Young podcast. Today we have Fernando Rodriguez. Fern, he is a stylist. He actually has the best style I've ever seen anyone have. And I worked with him in the Hallmark movie Love in the Sun, but he is doing some big projects right now. He is big in the styling world. Who are you, Fernando? Tell me.
Fernando Rodriguez, born and raised in Miami, and actually a costume designer. There's kind of a bit of a difference that people kind of like mistaken.
Oh.
Yes, costume designer for film and episodic. Styling is more like the editorial world, which I started in when I was like with my first mentor. So it's kind of two different worlds, kind of the same, we're under the same umbrella, but technically the title would be costume designer.
Yeah, for sure. You know what's interesting when it comes to film is growing up in theater. Well, I did film too growing up, but growing up in theater, everything is costume. But in film, you say wardrobe, but you're still the costume designer. So it's all just like.
Well, technically, wardrobe is a piece of furniture, so the proper term is costumes.
Yeah, me thinking I know shit. Cool. So. How did you get started in all this? Like, so you grew up down here in Miami, in South Florida?
Yeah, I was born in Hialeah. Oprah, raised in Hialeah.
Oh yeah, well, me too. Where'd you go to school?
I went to school in Broward. Well, in Hialeah, I went to it was called Little Angels Christian School back in the day. So I always grew up in private, then went to public for elementary when my parents moved to Miramar. Then eventually I ended up in Plantation where I went to American Heritage.
Oh, that's a great school, yeah. Did you go for arts there?
For medical. I actually wanted to be a doctor.
Oh, okay. Okay, so how did you get into costumes and styling and
the infamous question? I'm always like, I need to figure out how to shorten it because it's like everybody's always like, "What's your story?" But
I don't need you to shorten it. You could talk for as long as you want.
So I went to the medical prep school. It's just something. Well, I grew up around it. My mom wanted to be a doctor. Obviously, she couldn't finish because she had kids. That whole story. But we have family members in Honduras who own hospitals and clinics. Like I've seen my aunts give birth. I wanted to be an OBGYN. I used to shadow my cousin a lot when he gave birth to my aunts and all of that. Well, when my aunts gave birth. And then when I found out, did some research. Part of it was like wanting to experience a big school because I was always in small private schools. And then I did some research and came across American Heritage, the prep school, which was the arts, law, and medical. And I tested, got in for the medical program. Graduated with med honors, and then got into pre-med at Nova University. And one day I literally woke up and I was like, this isn't it. And I think that's happened to me 3 times in my life. So I can't really explain it. I just was not knowing what I was gonna do, but knowing how hard my parents worked, coming from nothing and building their own little empire. I was like, I'm not gonna have my parents pay all this private tuition money, and I dropped out. I dropped out not knowing what I was gonna do. Then I actually went to BCC, and I was like, let me just continue here, get the general basic credits, and then at that point in my life. Going through the whole I think I'm grown, let me get my own place, and then I realized I had to get a job.
Yeah.
And then I was like, okay, this is different. And then I ended up getting a job at Express in Aventura Mall. I was like, I guess this is what everybody does, I guess a job in retail. And then little did I know, that's where I met my first mentor, Nadia. She was the visual manager. And one day I started assisting her, which I became part of her visual team, and then we went to the point where they would send me to other stores to do their visuals, and then she kind of saw
doing visuals. Does that mean
the floor sets, the mannequins, kind of following
that's a whole science to it.
A lot of people, I guess it just came easy to me. Me not knowing what I was doing, I didn't know I was ever going to be in the arts because I grew up I want to be a doctor. Or, you grow up with old school parents that it's either engineer, law, doctor. And I was just moving up the ladder very quickly. Associates were getting upset because they were like, who's this young kid all of a sudden coming in? But it just made sense to me. It's funny because now looking back, I guess I was always into always had an eye for that. Because, like, as a kid, somebody asked me recently, like, when did you know or how far back do you remember? When my parents used to leave and leave me alone, I would like reorganize the entire house. I would fix the feng shui because I'm also interested in interior design and something I do with my dad on the side. So as she saw me growing, one day she was like, "If this is something you want to do, you should go to the art school." And I was like, "What is an art?" Like I didn't ever know like what art schools even existed or where were they. She's like, "Yeah, you should look into the Art Institute because at least if you like get a degree in merchandising, you can come back if retail is something you want to continue in. At least you'll get paid more. You can come in as management." And I was like, "Okay, cool, whatever." So I checked it out, saw the program, went back to my mom, and I explained it to her. She didn't quite understand what this whole art industry was, but she was always a firm believer of school. She was like, "As long as it's a school, I'll support it." And then I actually ended up quitting work because I'll never forget there was a lady in the fitting room who had worked there for years. It's one of those ladies that like just work for a hobby, not like they need to. Mm-hmm. And she noticed like they were also just like overworking me, retail. Like if you don't say no, they'll just keep putting you on. Yeah. And she was just like, "Fernando, like they will replace you in a heartbeat. Like if something happens to you," because I was just like overnights, floor sets, traveling, going to other stores.
Yeah. Because you think that that's going to help you.
Yeah, because they're kind of like, "Oh yeah, you're going to be this, you're going to be that." And I'm like, you kind of get like lost in that world. So between her one day just pulling me aside and like telling me like to take care of myself basically, like don't get consumed or like, into that whole like you're going to be this and that. And then Nadia like kind of whispering in my ear like you should go to school. Like obviously she saw something that I didn't where she was like, "Hey, go to school, not just like stay stuck." Because she had been working there already for almost 20 something years. So maybe now looking back, was like maybe she didn't want to see me stuck in that same cycle of just being comfortable in that position.
Does she have a degree?
Do you know? I don't remember. Oh. I wouldn't be surprised if she did, but right now I don't recall. So I checked it out. I ended up quitting the Express. I went to school. And then not even 2 months in, which this is where now I'm going to meet my second mentor, which is Danny Santiago, which is also like a well-known costume designer in South Florida and stylist. He graduated from the Art Institute of Miami 40 years ago now, probably if not even more. Back then it was called something else, and then it turned into like the International University of Miami of Art and Design. So I'll never forget, I was in my first class of the day and they made an announcement. Danny Santiago was looking for interns and the school went crazy. And I was just like, "Well, who is this guy? Like, what's so grand about this guy?" Again, because I'm new into like this whole fashion, now with like all these fashion kids and that's just like a whole another world.
Yeah.
So I was like, I kind of just like let it go. But then on the second class, I was bored and I literally wrote a 1-sentence email. I was like, "My name is Fernando. If you still need somebody, here's my cell phone." And out of 29 people, he selected me.
Wow.
And then...
Really? Like when something is meant for you, it's meant for you, Like that's something...
Yeah, and then at that point, like Murder, She Wrote. Like that was just like, I took off from there because with him, I assisted him in like Vogue and Elle, music videos, like you name it, I did it all with him. And I guess like I just kept evolving because obviously now I believe and see that this is what I'm meant to do and I love what I do. So like I just always landed in the right hands. And then I just kept growing and he's actually the one that took me into film, which I started doing Burn Notice with him. And then I did 4 years of Burn Notice, and I did Graceland, and then so on and so forth. And then
Graceland.
Yeah.
Seeing that Aaron today, I'm obsessed with him. I tried so hard to get on that show. It's so hard.
Yeah, and then started as the PA, became a buyer, and just moved up. They helped me get into the union, and then that's how I got into film.
Yeah, that's crazy too because I say this a lot on the podcast. It's like time just has a way of working itself into what is supposed to happen. Like it's interesting how you end up in a place and you look back and it's like something so small, like it's that lady in the fitting room, telling you like, "Hey, go to school," you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, and those small fragments of your life end up
made such
blooming.
a big,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why even now, like, in the height of my career, and like 'cause things are just happening really fast at the moment. And I also like I know I have to have moments, and I'm like, relax, you know, because you in the hype, you're like, oh my god, I could be doing this, I could move here, da da da. But I'm just like, because like you said, time, like it has not failed me yet. Like everything just has been happening when it's meant to happen. So definitely true.
Yeah. Have you found it hard adapting? Because I feel like the projects that I do know that you've done have taken you out of Miami. Like you've had to like, you know, when we were doing Love in the Sun, you were up in Tampa, you know, and you were just recently up in Utah. Like you have to kind of pick up and go. Is that something foreign to you? Is that something that excites you? Like how are you taking that? Because that's it could be really exciting at first, and then
it's exciting. I mean, it definitely is an adjustment. I mean, from always being so busy in Florida, like when I started Burn Notice and like back to back booked all year long on like TV series. But then unfortunately we lost like the incentives, so like you know there's not much film going on here. So like now at this point in my career, like you said, like when I worked with you in Tampa, I am taken away. But I mean I'm kind of like a gypsy. I'm always quick to like just pack a bag and go. It does not take much, so I guess that helps.
yeah.
But recently I didn't realize I was gone for like almost a year and a half. So now that I'm home, it's like I'm readjusting to like being home, and then but it's also like I have to tell myself like don't get too excited because with me like I get a phone call and it's like okay you gotta go. So like last time before I went to Utah, I literally wasn't even home for 2 full days. Like after being gone, I did the show in Orlando, then did the 2 Hallmark movies, and then I came back home after doing the series with Harry Connick, and I was like I'm home.
Yeah, you did that. That was cool.
I was like I'm home, like I'm gonna chill, and then literally not even 2 days in my bed, and they're like you gotta go to Utah, and then 5 months later now.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's fun. It, you know, you miss home, but again, like I don't really get homesick, and right now it's fun because it's like it's new, kind of sort of.
Exactly. And your career is skyrocketing. I want to talk about David Makes Man. Like that's really cool. Like David Makes Man is a show on the Oprah network. And it actually just premiered like a month ago.
The 14th. What are we on?
It's September. Yeah. Like about a month ago. Yeah. And it's filmed in Orlando. I was also up for that. And how did you get into that? Like, did you know Terrell from beforehand?
Yeah. Well, I met Terrell because I also did Moonlight.
Oh, okay,
which was like my first like feature that I did. I assisted the designer Caroline, which is funny because that project they actually didn't think I was gonna take the job because the pay was so low. It was such like a low budget indie film.
Right.
But at that time, I wasn't working, and you know, big or small, I just love meeting people, and I'm like, well, if I'm not doing anything, why not?
Right.
And I hope I always try to remind myself, even now, where I have to be more selective on the types of project, just because anything I do now kind of molds the kind of designer that I'm going to be. But I like connected with the script. I read it. I was like, this is amazing. Like I was like clearly able to relate to it. And I was like, again, I was just more excited to meet people. I was like, well, let's see who's on the project. Like, I love working with and collaborating with other people.
Mm-hmm. It was such a homegrown kind of project. I think that's something, especially people in South Florida, artists in particular in South Florida, were really drawn to, because it was just like everybody was from here.
Yeah.
And was so beautiful,
Majority of the crew was from Miami. Like some department heads came from like LA and whatnot, but majority of the crew was from here, which is great. So Terrell, I didn't meet Terrell till after the fact because he never really came to set. And then once the hype started going with Moonlight, it started winning all like the festivals. I found him on Facebook and saw that we had a couple mutual friends, and I just like hit him up and I was like, hey, congrats, honored, like it was great working on your project. That's all. I just thought he deserved, I felt like I had to say something.
Right.
And then we started chatting because we have mutual friends, just like small talk. And then he made a joke about dressing him for an award show they had like in 2 days. And then I was like, Terrell, like, that's not for you. Because he was like, oh no, don't worry about it. Maybe because he doesn't like stressing people out. Like he's not about like the drama.
Yeah.
And I was like, Terrell, that's my job. Like you just say the word. And then he was like, okay. I'm sure not expecting like what was gonna come of it. And then the next day I had like 3 racks of suits, like all like prepped. And then we just started the relationship from there. Because then I dressed him for all the award shows. That I was able to, which led to the Oscars, and that's when, because of him, which I'm forever grateful.
Wait, you dressed him for the Oscars?
I
mean, he looked dope in that suit for the Oscars.
So that was like my LA Cinderella story. Yeah. That was my first time going there.
You
because
went?
Because of him, yeah.
You were there?
Well, I went to the viewing party. I didn't go with him to the Oscars. But
still, super cool. Super cool.
So I was just to be like dressed him. I like sent him off to the red carpet. I was like, this is like, it was just a beautiful experience. And everything just happened. Like nothing was stressful. My friends were like texting me like, oh my God, are you stressed? What's going on? But like everything just fell into place, which was like odd. But
you're also just like oddly chill all the time. Like I remember being like, how are you so chill? How are you so chill?
It's not heart surgery. Like it's closed. So it's like when people freak out,
but people get to be so picky, you know? Like in the project we worked on, we're like, this looks great, and then they're like, no. We're like, oh. Okay, here I go. I lived in like the that in fittings for that, you know?
So yeah, I mean, and because of like even in that moment, because of him, I went to the Vanity Fair party. Like I just had again my Cinderella LA story. And then we kind of kept in contact, and that's where we built our relationship. And then David McMahon, like I briefly heard about it. I mean, we hung out a couple times after that, just as friends, and I would check in and see how he's doing or whatever. And then I heard, I think I was doing actually like a Hallmark, the Love at Sea one, the one on the cruise with Alexa and Carlos. And again, people have talked about it, and mind you, I had hung out with him, I think maybe once, but I never brought it up, because that's one thing I respect, because, you know, he gets that all the time, I'm sure, like, people always, like, contacting him, and I never brought it up, so, because I'm like, he has my number, he knows what I do, so there's no point in being like, hey, but I was on that job, and they called me, and then they're like, are you interested in doing David McMahon? And I was like, yeah. So because of him, he was part of the reason why, you know, because he obviously vouched for me along with other Miami natives that were like, for sure, Fernando. And again, it was just great to be part of a project that is a Miami story.
Did you know where it was going at the time? Did you know that like what network it was going to, or it was just still in like the pre-production stages?
No, I mean at that point, because I mean when they call us, it's pretty much already like kind of set in stone.
Okay.
You know, so me and the production designer are normally one of the first department heads to kind of start, but like we knew that it was for Owen and for Oprah and Michael B. Jordan. But then, mind you, I had been prepping probably like close to a month, which was all cool. Like did my storyboards, talking with Terrell, and just making sure like he's satisfied. And you know, people were like, oh, it's funny because some people thought it would have been easier for me because they assumed like me and Terrell are like friends, but like I look up to him, so I'm like, there's actually more pressure. I was like, I have to make sure this looks right. And then also being a Miami native, and Terrell's all about like authenticity and like make sure it looks right and makes sense, because us people from Miami and South Florida, like if something doesn't make sense, we're gonna catch it.
Yeah.
You know, so we always try our best to like make sure it looks authentic. So I'll never forget, because me and Terrell were riding to work, and then he was like, oh, by the way, just to give you a heads up, Oprah only cares about wardrobe and hair and makeup. And I was like, excuse me?
Sorry, no pressure.
I was like, okay, because she's big on like making sure people are represented accordingly and like, you know, and all that jazz. And I was like, okay, cool.
No big deal.
No big deal. And I think literally it must have been the week prior to us starting to shoot, I get an email, and then the UPM and Terrell, they were like, oh, you have to do a presentation for Oprah. And I was like, excuse me, say what? So me, the director, and the production designer, Michael was the director of the pilot, we had to do a presentation together for Oprah via Skype. So I was like, now in the midst of like fitting, we're about to start shooting, I was like, I had to like take like, some time aside and do like the presentation, put all the pictures.
Because this was still while you were doing Love at Sea.
No, this was after. Like
Oh, it's
literally, I
after,
just jumped
okay.
from that project to that project.
Okay.
Making sure like Terrell was cool with it. I would like ask him questions and all of that. And then collaborating with the production designer because like we have to complement each other's work,
Right.
So, and he's done like a lot of work. So for him to like respect me as like equally, that was also like a great experience to have him. And like he loved my presentation. He was even like, do you mind if I use some of your images? He's like, I love how your mood boards just have so much life to them and all of that. And I was like, yeah, of course. So that was like, it made me feel good. Like that kind of gave me a little more confidence. So the first day we had to do the same presentation before Oprah. We had to do it. I think it was like 20 executive producers of like Warner Brothers, of OWN, and all that jazz. And I was like, oh crap, here we go. But that was cool. I was like, I went through it, and like Terrell and Dee, the showrunner, Dee Harris, she was like, you did amazing. Terrell was like, Fiona, that was really great. I was like, cool, okay. And then Oprah was the following day. So mind you, you would have thought like 20, 30 people made me nervous. But I was like, oh, that was easy breezy. And the next day was just Oprah. So I'll never forget me, the director, the pilot director, and the production designer were walking together to the room where we were like going to do the whole Skype situation. We were all like, shit. Like, here we go. We were all like so nervous. It was a bit nerve-wracking. We sat there. They turn on the screen. Here's Oprah in her Hawaii home. Her dogs are in the background, and we're just like, okay, here we go. But it was great. I mean, we went through the whole presentation, and she literally simply was like, "You guys are about to create magic." And I was like, we were all like speechless. And it was funny because then, she did ask me one question about Felicia Rashad's wardrobe because like there was some stuff like where with little cardigans and sweaters. She was like, oh, but aren't you in South Florida? Isn't it hot? And I was like, but we go from AC to AC. Like we don't do like
we both have long sleeve.
Yeah, like we always either like kids always either have hoodies or we have some type of jacket. And thankfully Terrell like jumped in and was like, yeah, like it's crazy how like it's 100 degrees in South Florida, but we always have to have a jacket because we're always in like 60-degree rooms. But besides that, she was like super stoked and happy with everything that we did. And then it was funny because one of the other executive producers was like, does anybody else have anything to say? And then it got quiet. I mean, like Oprah spoke. Like, what are you gonna say after that? It was like, so that went well, and that was just like, again, another point in my career. I'm like, wow, like that just happened. And so for her to be stoked and happy with like the work, that I collaborated with like the other artists, I was like, wow. And then just the whole like Oprah experience, I started doing my fittings. I would like, cause she would have to approve the looks. Like the chain would go to her cause she wanted to see the wardrobe. And then I'll never forget when I got an email saying that you no longer have to send the looks cause Oprah just loves everything you're sending her. And I was just like, I was like, okay. And then we started filming and then David makes me.
It really is. That's crazy because it's all like you were like everything happened so fast. But if you really think of like that time frame that it has been a really quick. Just a lot of stuff has been going on. From the literally just from the Oscars that year to David Makes Man was like less than a year maybe, right, between.
Yeah, because I mean, well, was it? Because when was it's like 2016, and then I did the Florida Project. And then they got nominated for an Oscar.
Oh, you did the Florida Project too.
Yeah, I did that. So those are like basically, again, forever grateful for Terrell and opening that door for all of us as artists. And then Florida Project for, it's funny because you met Jules on the project we did. And, because I told you she was my boss when I was a PA. So it's funny how like now, like I'm, making sure I take care of her. She was the one that vouched for me and told the producers for Florida Project, she was like, trust me, he's not going to disappoint you. And they took a chance and they were like, that's because Moonlight I assisted the designer, and then Florida Project was like me designing my first feature, which opened up so many doors. Like Moonlight put me up there and then Florida Project just like pushed me off the ledge. Until this day, because of those two projects, I get calls all the time.
That's amazing. What is that process? Because I don't know this process as far as like you know, in like costume designing, like what is that process for each character? Like what do you break down what exactly it is that you have to do? Because it's so much more than just picking out clothes. Like you said it so nonchalantly, you're like I'm just getting, no, it's not. Like you have to, you really, there's a whole nother, like a deep level of just understanding of a character for, you know what I mean? Because us as humans, we don't just get up and wear whatever we want, you know? Like we do.
There's a
but we
reason
think
for
about
like
it.
every choice that we make. It depends on the project, but as far as like the way I like to go into it, it's really sticking to like character building. Like, you know, you read these names and you go through it, but like essentially these are characters, these are people that have their own personality. So I'm all about like backstories, because now that backstory is gonna make the character. Like there's a reason why she only wears black, or there's a reason why she doesn't wear heels. Like, you know, it's just like the little small things that like make that so, and I also try to even carry that into like, which goes into the collaboration of production design and like set dressing, like when they set like a character's room and all of that, because I like to walk in and be like, that doesn't make sense, or like, hey guys, maybe let's do this, because essentially I'm building the character and I kind of have the backstory. I mean, they're kind of playing off like what it says in the script and all that, and I get that. That's why like I like to share my mood boards and like talk about it with them so we're all on the same page, because so I'll like get the script, I'll break it down, I'll put all the characters apart and just create the backstories. And I create kind of like, you know, especially I think with doing David Makes Man and doing a series, the 10 episodes, essentially it really is a 10-hour movie, because it's just a continuation, like it's a whole story. Like how important it is to know the arcs of the character, because that's kind of like where you get like, you know, the stories and like what the character's going through. So learning that, I mean, I think David Makes Man had a total of like 192 characters throughout the whole season. It was a lot. So I like to stick to that same process now, knowing, okay, like we have Susan, you know, like this is where she starts and where is she ending, and then I'll kind of like notate and be like, this is where we're going to change the color scheme and go a little softer or a little darker, and then ending, you know, brighter depending on the mood and what emotion she's going, and then goes along with all the characters that are around her.
It's so much work, like so much goes into that.
It's a lot, because I mean, if you have 10 characters, then you have to worry about balancing colors and make sure nobody has the same color or the same pattern, and like everybody has their own like personality. Like, and then you have some shows where it's like more females and males, and I think now, like doing projects now, everything is so like trendy, but then everything can start looking the same. So it kind of like you also have to be conscious of that, and complementing the production design, and where's the location, and what are the colors of the wall, and then on top of that, what the producers want, and then on top of that, what is the actress like?
Well, yeah, I mean, I remember you would ask me and be like, do you like this? And I was like, it's not on me, it's on you, I don't care, you know what I mean? You were always really like cool about
like
that.
I always get shocked that like, even from you to like, you know, like bigger names, people have been doing it for like years, they're always like shocked, but I'm like, you need to be comfortable. Like, I'm just a tool for you to do your job. Like, I'm here to like help you to transform essentially, because you have to get into character. I don't. So like, I've never been one, I don't think it's right to just be like, force you to wear this, you know what I mean? Like, no, you have to be comfortable, because you're gonna walk on set, all lights and cameras are on you, you know, and then for you to have any self-conscious of anything, like, no, I like to be aware of that.
Yeah, no, you were always really like, I remember just being like, but you were so apologetic, because I had a dress that I couldn't sit in, because it would get wrinkled, and you're like, I'm so sorry, we have it. He's like, he would be like, do you want a stool so you can like hover over it? And I'm like, it's fine, it was like, it was totally fine, but you and Jules were both like so aware of that, and I remember feeling like so honored that was like a thing, you know, because normally you do walk on a set and they're just like, here, throw this on, and it is so important. It is, I think what makes you so good at your job is that you do see it as a team effort, as a collaborative effort, because when there's so many people just doing just their job, it stifles it, I think.
It takes away from the art, from the passion, from like the reason why we're there, the excitement. Like, it should be fun, you know. It's not the easiest at times, but still I try to, I mean, even like, you know, as simple as when you come in to my area, because I feel like the relationship between me and the talent, like you're vulnerable also in my space. Because we do fittings and you're undressing, redressing, so it's like I'm very sensitive and like I try to like feel you guys out and see how you feel, because then I know how to cater to you.
Right.
Like when you come into my space, like I always like to be like, how are you doing? You know what I mean? Because I want to make sure like you're good, not just like, here you go, start your day, throw the clothes on, because like you're human as well. Like,
Yeah.
God knows what you're going. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
you both are stepping into a workplace, and to make my life easier is to make sure you're good.
Yeah.
As long as you're happy with me, despite whatever else people are making you go through on set, at least if you can come to me and like, whether it's like, hey, whatever you may need, like I always like to make my talent like, have your back. I'm here for you. That's why as a designer, I don't like to leave set. Because it's like, if something happens or there's like, for whatever reason, you're like, hey, you know what, I'm not feeling this, I got you. Like, let's change it,
Right.
so you can do your job.
Right. So I'm going to bring up Grown because Grown, if you've heard a few episodes back, was written in collaboration with Josh Jean Baptiste, who was part of Your Boys Talkin' episode, and Edson Jean, who was in the episode a couple episodes back. You also designed for them, and Maria Corina, which is also an amazing person who is eventually I'll have on the podcast as well, I'm sure. How was it working? Because that's also another, like, Grown. It's a homegrown project. It was very Miami, very set to I guess the millennial generation of South Florida.
Yeah.
How was working in that? And that was a completely fun. I love the show, and it was just it catered to our millennials down here. How'd you like working with Edson, with Josh, and just doing that project?
That was probably my first series. Well, that was a web series of like me actually being the department head designer, as far as like like a TV show. Which I got it because of Andrew. I don't know, Andrew Hevia, which is he. I met him on Moonlight, and because of that, he called me to do that. I had to interview, and that's when I met Edson. And I guess Edson was like, he's the one. And then that just started that collaboration and relationship. But from day one, and it's funny because Josh worked with me in Express. I trained him.
Really?
So I walk in, and like, now he's interviewing me. And I was just like, cause we walked like by each other at the office, and I was like,
I'm so glad I asked you about
him.
this.
I was like, why does he look so familiar? And it took till the second time, and he was like, oh my God, like you trained me at Express. Like, and we worked together for a while, and like I always, even back then, that's why you have to always treat people right, because you never know what you're gonna come across. And like now was my boss essentially. Like he was like one of the creators of Grown. Like, can you imagine if I was rude, he would have been like, no.
Get you, yeah. This world is too small to be.
So that added more to the comfort. I mean, Edson, even from our interview and just conversation, he was just so welcoming and just open, and like this, it was more conversational. It wasn't like, interview and all of that. And then I met Karina, and then she's another like lover to death.
Yeah.
So it was just a great project. Again, another Miami-based project. So it's like, we're so familiar with these worlds, and it was fun creating those characters, and the respect that they all gave me, which was amazing, and they allowed me to collaborate. And that was one of the times where I started realizing it's more than just a wardrobe, because like that's when I would start like giving opinions about like, hey, like maybe we should tweak this in this character's room. Like it's the bigger picture. I mean, I try to like know my place. But sometimes, I'm creating these characters. Like if it doesn't make sense, I will like in a nice way be like, hey guys, like, and they were always very open. And
important as an outside eye to just kind of see, because sometimes, like a lot of those characters were based off of people too. Mm-hmm. So it's just like it's finding those little tweaks and stuff to make them human.
And they were so just like open and just like great to collab with. So that was an amazing, fun project. Yeah.
So is there, what project would you say that you've had I don't want to say like the most difficult time working on, but just has felt the most challenging creating the world of the characters, or a character? Is there a character that you were just, have you felt like stumped on?
Definitely, as of now, I think David McMahon, like challenging, like not in a bad way where I was like scared, like oh my god, I can't do this, but I mean Terrell McCraney's writing and his team of writers, like it definitely, I think it pushed all of us, like because we did block shooting, so we did 3 episodes at one time, where you normally would do one episode 7 days, you know, then you move on. Like we were doing 3 at one time, so it was like in every episode there was like something major, some dream sequence. So so like for the drag character Elijah, who's like the what's it called, non-conforming the character. I had to create like drag costumes for her, and that I've never had. So like the first time, you know, I think as a leader you just have to know your strengths and your weaknesses. I know the first episode where we had to like do the full-blown drag outfit for Elijah. I called my friend who was a former drag queen, you know, and I made sure like he got his position as a drag consultant, and he was like the seamstress for that specific look, because I had to learn, you know, like there's certain things that like I had to know my place and know like it's all about creating a strong team. Again, it's a collaborative. Me as a designer, even the people that work for me now or with me now, like I hate saying for me, it's with me. Like I always ask their opinions because like they have an eye as well. Like I always make it a team effort, and I show pictures of the fittings and I get their opinions, because it's like, again, we're a team. Like we're here to like do this together. But that show, again, just like doing 3 episodes at once and Terrell's writing and the dream sequences, it was like, and like I said before, it really was a 10-hour movie. So in the beginning, like where you would normally would prep episode by episode, that one I learned real quick, like you have to know what's gonna be happen at the end, because again, the arc, like where's this character going? So I learned a lot very quickly. I had to. But again, I think with that one, the biggest challenge was doing Elijah's character. Just because it's something that could have been, it's like that fine line of keeping it authentic to Miami as far as the way people dress here, as far as like mixing prints, where you're like there's certain looks that you can see in the streets and be like, that's so Miami. And then just didn't want it to feel costumey, you know, again, sticking to the authenticity of the characters where it doesn't look like overly done. I think that was one of the major, but it ended up being, it was just a beautiful experience. And also like making sure that Travis, who played Elijah, felt comfortable, and he, you know, so with him, I dressed him every single time. Like every day I would like personally go and dress him, because I just love seeing him go from like Travis to like Elijah, like who this like grand character that you can see in the show. And it was just a beautiful experience. So it was like a good challenge. It taught me a lot, and I feel like I learned and grew a lot from that. Because even now, like the projects I've done after that, I'm like, give me more. Like, you know, because it was just like I always had to be on my toes for that. So I felt like I needed it. Yeah,
I mean that makes it so much more rewarding too, right? Do you have basically like an inspiration that you pull from whenever you're feeling, I don't want to say stressed because I've never literally seen you stressed, but like whenever you're like, okay, all right, hold on.
I think till recently when I was in Utah, which was a whole nother experience. I mean, my inspiration is just people like I come across, experiences that I go through, other people's like stories, you know what I mean? Like it's, like people ask, it's not like, oh, I was inspired by this plant. Like, you know, it's just my experiences and what I've seen, and like traveling and meeting different people, all walks of life. Like that's kind of where I get my inspiration from. And luckily I've been blessed to work on such great movies and great projects. Essentially they're all kind of been like the whole realism and like real worlds that we have to create. So I think that's why, having experienced all that I have in my backstory, I've been able to like put that into the stories and know like when it makes sense, when it doesn't make sense, to give it that like authentic factor. So.
And how is your family, you know, you were saying how your mom was like, what is art school? And what didn't understand. Like, looking back now, how does your mom, I'm sure she's like so proud of you, and like, how does she take this lifestyle now, you know?
I mean, yeah, her and my dad. I mean, my whole entire family, like, they're definitely like my number one fans. They love it. They're happy. I mean, they see that I'm successful on my own, doing my things. They just sit back and just watch me enjoy.
What's your favorite thing about coming home when you have like time? Because when you have like those one days, you know.
I think now, I think since this is the longest I've been gone, and then I'm back now, which I don't even know when I'm gonna leave, but I guess it's just realizing the importance of family. Like, you know what I mean? Me and my family are super close. It's always been just me and my sister, my mom and dad. And my sister has a baby, it's 1 year old. So I've been like trying to tell myself, just relax. Like, cause who's to say, like, if these jobs coming up, like, line up and goes well, like, I'll be gone for another year.
Right.
So it's just like, again, enjoying family and the close friends. And it actually makes me appreciate Miami more, as much as I'm like, I'm moving to LA. It's like, then I come home and I'm like, wow, like, this is home.
It's
like,
home.
Miami will always be home.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So we're approaching the end of the episode. So if you could tell your, let's say 14, 15-year-old self, the kid that's going into American Heritage for medicine, something, what would you tell them?
I think I would tell them that just don't be afraid, like, that you are capable. Where there was back then, if it was me deciding to stick to medicine, or like, you know, like, just don't be afraid, because fear can hold you back, and fear, you know, like, then you don't live. And I'm even now at 29, turning 30, it's I have to constantly remind myself, like, just live and enjoy it. Be in the moment. Like, don't be stuck in like, can I do it? Can I not? What if? You know, it was just
Right.
kind of
Just
yeah,
go for it.
Go for it.
Yeah. What's something new that you've done recently? It could be literally, and it doesn't have to do with your job. It could be like literally, I took a different route to work. You know.
Oh, hiking, like legit hiking in Utah. Like, that was an experience.
So you were in Utah for how long?
4 months.
And you were doing a movie over there,
feature,
right?
Yeah.
A feature movie. And we were talking about this before the podcast started, but it's a very different environment than like humid South Florida. So, and on top of that, you don't really hike in Florida. Like, there's nowhere to hike.
You
have
don't.
the
I mean,
Everglades.
the first time I went hiking, because I got there Friday, Saturday morning, I woke up, and I was like, I need to stay in bed or like do something. So I went hiking, because I got like some recommendations and whatnot. But it's funny, because the one thing they didn't recommend was don't go alone. But I ended up going alone. And here I am with this 6-mile hike. I actually ended up getting stuck in the snow, because I went in June and there was still like snow in the mountains. So it was like an experience, because everybody was like, oh, there's a lake at the top of the mountain. It's beautiful. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to go do this hike. And it's funny, I got dressed in my cute little gym outfit. I'm get my Instagram photo. And then I get there, I park. I'm like, I felt underdressed. I'm like, wow, like, there's people have sticks, like backpacks. I'm like, this is like legit hiking. And I was like, it's okay, whatever, just go for it. And it was definitely an experience, but I fell in love with it. Just being lost in nature and just like hearing the trees, like hearing the water, like at that point seeing snow, like it going from like beautiful green to like all white, like, which is where I got at that point I was inspired by that to do the feature, which I actually like put that into like my work. So it was just
cool.
like a great experience.
Cool. That's
yeah.
amazing. And we'll talk briefly about the difference between living in Utah and Miami. Like, it's a whole world of a difference, you know, like how was the adjustment to that? Because 4 months is a long time. 4 months you're living in a place, you know?
Beautiful place, surprisingly a lot to do, amazing food, because they don't make money off the liquor, so the quality of food is amazing, because it's a dry state. It's interesting because you have the whole Mormon community, so that was like a culture shock. But then it's also super progressive. Like, I actually flew in on Pride weekend, and I was like, where am I? Because I would have never thought Utah, Salt Lake City.
Yeah.
But it's actually one of like the bigger gay communities in the U.S. And I was like, really? But then I met some people, and a lot of them do it to rebel against the Mormons. So it's just a crazy like dynamic between like the community of the Mormons and then like the regular folks, and then you have like the gay community, and it was just like a lot. But it was a beautiful place. So I just enjoyed the scenery. Like waking up every morning, I couldn't go over like the mountains, like
right.
because here we just have the beach and it's flat.
Exactly. Like it's you don't look outside and see. I mean, you see palm trees, which I'm very grateful for.
Yeah.
But there's it's easy to forget how beautiful places can be. Yeah. Okay. And what is something new you'd want to try?
I don't know.
It's a hard question.
It's a hard question because I really haven't put any thought into that.
It's hard to kind of sit back and kind of see, I think both of us live really fast-paced lives, you know what I mean? And to just be like, wait, what? I could try something, But yeah, it could literally be, I want to try food, I want to try skydiving.
I definitely, I'm for sure skydiving. But recently, I guess just I've been, again, the fast pace, always being on set, and like there really is we don't have a stable, like our schedule is all out of place. Like, so I think right now what I'm actually wanting to try, I guess I do have something, to figure out a balance, because I think that's important. I think the fast pace that my career is going, that's why like being home, I'm like family, like creating that balance for myself. And just kind of set myself up for the next project. So I do want to try like hiring a nutritionist and learning about food, because being on set and Crafty and the chips and the candy and the donuts, like
Crafty is the devil.
It's the devil. And I'm like, now I'm back home trying to get back into CrossFit. I'm like, damn you, Crafty. So that's something I've been trying to look into, like hiring a nutritionist and just try to like have somewhat of a healthy lifestyle, because we're always just on the go and just creating a healthy habit.
It's hard to maintain a healthy lifestyle when you're just like jumping from one place to the other. It's like one of the hardest things, I think. Okay, so how can people, follow you and like kind of keep up with your fun life? Is your social media public?
Yeah.
Yeah? All right. So how can people follow you on Instagram?
My handle is styled by J Farad. J Farad is actually my company that I have, and that's also my website, jfarad.co, so you can see my work and all that.
Okay, cool. You see why you got me confused with styling?
I know, I'm actually thinking about changing it to costumes by, it's all branding, and like I think as you evolve, you kind of have to figure out that niche, and that's why, because it's styling, but now I'm really falling into legit costume designing, so I feel like I have to change the title, because styling is more like editorial photo shoots and all that, but right now it's styled by J Farad.
And you can see a little bit more of his bio and all the links to how you can connect with Fern on the We're So Young Meet Our Guest page. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you.
This is so fun. Thanks again for listening to the We're So Young podcast. Like what you've been hearing? Help spread the word. If you haven't already, subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. Rate, review, and tell your friends about We're So Young. And don't forget to follow us on our socials, at We're So Young Podcast on Instagram, at We're So Young Pod on Twitter, and We're So Young Podcast on Facebook. Let's all get inspired to try new things together. That's it for now. Tune in on the 1st and the 15th of each month for new episodes. Until then, step out of your comfort zones and try new things, 'cause we're so young.